Hi, everyone, and welcome to Breaching the Boardroom podcast. Today, we are talking about a system that has transformed how businesses operate, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS. At NetGain Technologies, we use EOS to stay focused, aligned, and accountable, and we've seen the difference it makes in driving real results. I'm joined by Barry Barrett, a seasoned entrepreneur and EOS implementer. Barry's journey started in the Marine Corps, and after transitioning into business, he helped scale his family's automotive repair shop to $1 million in annual sales within just 4 years. He's also built and led a successful sales training company where he discovered that many businesses struggled with more than just sales. They needed a clear operating system to keep everything on track. Today, Barry helps leadership teams implement EOS to create structure, clarity, and growth in their organizations. In this episode, we're going to discuss why so many businesses struggle with accountability and how EOS can change that, and what it takes to build a business that truly runs itself. If you're a business leader looking for a proven way to take your organization to the next level, you won't want to miss this conversation. Barry, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you. So for those unfamiliar, can you briefly explain what EOS is and why it's important?
Yeah, EOS is the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and what it does and why it's important. It gets people with what we call vision, traction, and healthy. Vision is everybody on your leadership team rowing in the right direction, where you are, where you're going, how to get there. Once you have that vision set, traction, timeless principles, tools, disciplines, and accountability to execute on the vision. And then healthy, working together as a cohesive leadership team, having fun, getting things done, because rarely do we see leaders do that. And then from there goes the leadership team, goes the rest of your organization, and that is what we do.
Fantastic. Why is it crucial for businesses to define their vision and traction goals? That's a big thing in EOS, kind of like a first step.
Yeah, alignment's huge. And, I was in the Marine Corps and we call it, and I listened to a couple of episodes that you had before, and you had a former Marine on there, which was kind of cool to listen to. I loved it. A great podcast, by the way. The biggest thing is in the Marines, we would call it commander's intent. And so when you have commander's intent, it would be the general or somebody higher or whatever, and they are looking to do something and they intend on something. Rarely do we see people good at getting what's out of their head on paper, on purpose, so that the rest of the organization can go and achieve what is in their head. And so when you don't have that done, you're going to have misalignment, you're going to have frustrations, you're going to have all the chaos that goes with that. And then you're going to hit the ceiling, what we call it, at a certain point. Usually people, only 4% of businesses ever do over $1 million a year in revenue. Were you aware of that?
Wow.
Yeah, 4%. And then, so the rest of them are hitting the ceiling somewhere below $1 million. $1 million isn't what it used to be, they say, right? I'll take it, but less than $1 million, you don't get to pay people because you got taxes coming out straight off the top, right? Like Uncle Sam's going to grab his portion, right? And then you've got all kinds of other expenses. You've got overhead, and then people are the biggest expense that most businesses will ever face. So $1 million just spreads out. And then all of a sudden you're behind on your dreams and your bills as a leader. And there you are. So you have no plan. You have a plan in your head, but if you don't get it out on paper, on purpose, in a proven system, you're going to have a really hard time scaling that business. And I would say, given that only 4% of people do it, it's almost impossible. The odds are way against you.
Mm-hmm. Will you provide an example of what EOS would define as successful goal setting?
Yeah, successful goal setting, we would do SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time bound, right? And so people say SMART, that's old, that's been out there for a long time. I personally added a layer to that because of the coaching that I got, which is specific, tangible, difficult, self-referenced. And I love the last one, self-referenced, because so many people are paying attention to other people, right? And then so they end up trying to achieve someone else's goal instead of their own. And so that is what it means to have an EOS specific goal. But I love the extra step to that. And I try to encourage my teams to stop paying attention to other people because you're not trying to become them. That's their dream. How about we pay attention to our dream, make it self-referenced. I don't mind if someone looks at other people to see what may be possible, but not to set their goal against what other people might see, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we say is a goal and how we set it. And I think of goals, and so it's very, EOS has very exact language. We do a 10-year target, which would be a goal, but we call it a target. We do a 3-year picture. So the picture is a different goal, right? And then we do a 1-year goal. And then we call them rocks, which are quarterly goals, but we call them rocks. So we have very specific language so that when we talk, we know exactly what is meant by that without having to explain it to everybody. It becomes your own language. And so that's how we set it and forget it, but we don't, and then we achieve it.
It does. We were talking to one of our partners, and it slipped. One of our Q1 rocks is this, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, do you run on EOS? We run on EOS." So it really is like a special lingo.
I had 2 clients in same industry, their security, and one was trying to purchase a piece of the other's business. So they went to their office, saw their core values, and I'm like, I tell people, it's like doctor-patient privilege. Like, no, I don't care what you say in this room. No one else knows you've been working with me no matter what. And she looked at the other leader and said, "Hey, you got core values. You guys run on EOS?" They said, "Yeah." And they said, "Who's your implementer?" They said, "Barry." And they're like, "Yeah, Barry's our implementer too." And so they're quote competitors, right? And so EOS, but it's not like I'm not in their industry. I can't give them advice, and I'm not, it doesn't matter what business you're in, right?
We had a pretty long list of core values before we implemented EOS, and we've narrowed it down to 4 now that we really, really do focus on. At NetGain, they're people first.
Go ahead. It sounds putting you on the spot. Go ahead. What are they?
People first, above and beyond, continuous improvement, and extreme ownership.
I love it. So you got a little Jocko in there. So you understood when I said commander's intent. Yeah. Do you listen to a lot of Jocko?
No.
Extreme Ownership is a book. Did you read it?
No.
Oh, no. You got to read that book. Okay. You can have it as core value. Yeah.
All right.
So Jocko Willink is a former Navy SEAL. He's got a podcast, got a great podcast, in a company that's leadership. But yeah, Extreme Ownership. It's good.
Yeah, I will definitely check that one out.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk a little bit about what it means to have the right person in the right seat?
Yeah, it's twofold. So right person means they share your core values. And so you listed your 4. We have 5. And so I'll take your 4, right? So there's if you share somebody's core values, there's a plus, meaning that most of the time they are sharing that core value and living it. No one's perfect. There's a minus, which means most of the time they are not. And there's a plus minus, means 50-50. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And then you do a people analyzer, and there's a line, there's a bar. And then your job is, if you're ever below the bar, we have a very specific process called a strike meeting process, right? And so we analyze quarter by quarter everybody in the company, and they share core values. They don't. If they don't, then we give them a 30-day action plan to come above the bar. And so that's right people, which is the most important thing to start with. And then there's right seat, meaning they get, want, and have the capacity to do their job well. Get it means that unique ability, I said a God-given talent. You didn't do anything, you start out a job, you're a 6 or 7 out of 10 already just because you get it. And then you want it, that deep burning desire to succeed every day, right? I call it the insatiable desire to succeed. Like, you can't satiate that. You want to come to work, you want to win, you want to do your job, you love it. And then the capacity is the spiritual, mental, physical, time, tools, resources to do your job well, the training to do your job well. And so that's the last one. Like you can train that if you have the luxury to bring people's capacity up. That can be a no in the beginning, but the other two must be a yes. We must get it. We must want it. Because if you don't get it and you're a 3 out of 10 when you show up, you're only going to become maybe a 6 out of 10. So we want you to become a 10 out of 10, and we're going to support you in that. But if you can't or won't, it doesn't matter. If you can't or won't, you just won't, right? You look, we can find you another place to be. Now, the caution is this, is in our culture in America, we hire based on skill, and then we end up firing because of moral failures. I always say showing up late is a moral failure, not a skill set failure. We treat it like it's a skill set. Hey, if you just do this, like you could be on time. Well, you're having the wrong conversation. Like that's being chronically late. Some people are going to be late. Like you're going to be late sometimes. Something's going to happen. But if you're chronically late, that's a moral failure. And so we take a different approach. We hire based on core values and fire if you end up not being able to do your job well. Because most people if you go out to eat or go to any place, like they're not very good at their job. Would you agree or disagree? Most people.
Right. No,
yeah.
Agreed.
So you might as well just hire really awesome people and they will become good at their job, guaranteed. Almost guaranteed, right? It's rare. It's good.
Yeah. So once a week, our teams, we get together as a team and have a very structured meeting where we check in about our metrics, we check in on goals, we have issues where we solve the issues. Those meetings are called level 10 meetings, and that's an EOS term. What common mistakes do companies make in their meetings?
The biggest common mistake of all time, it's undefeated, is you're really discussing symptom of deeper root issues. And then you discuss, and then nothing gets solved. Yeah. And then there's no solve. And you're like, well, guess we'll talk about that again next week. All right. See you later.
Yeah.
And so, we want to really, I say it this way, IDS is identify, discuss, and solve. There's an issue solving track over my left shoulder. There's a EOS leadership team manual. And in there is 30 some odd tools. And one of them is called the issue solving track. And so you go down and you use the issue solving track. When you get to IDS, you identify, you discuss, and you solve. And then the second mistake they'll make is they are making decisions based on feelings. And facts don't care about your feelings, and it's math, not magic. And the old saying is, where there's data available, let's go with the data. When there's opinions, well, let's just go with mine. And so they don't make decisions based on data. They make the decision based on the feelings and opinions of basically the leaders. And feelings and opinions will lie to you fast, early, and often. Because if they didn't, I say it this way, we wouldn't have a divorce rate of 50%. Because they don't make, we fall in love with our feelings and we don't do it on basic data. And most people will show you their true colors via data. And if you're blind to that because you like them, you like that person, right? This is where you're talking about firing people or hiring people. That likability will blind you, but the data with that person will not, right? So that's the second most important, the big one. The third one is they have no real agenda. They just get into a room with no structure. They have no objectives. They have no agenda. And then they're basically just IDSing. If they are, they're just discussing the whims of the visionary. And then when really the visionary is probably the problem, that's organizational whiplash. So there's a lot there I could unpack, but yeah.
Can you share a memorable success story where EOS made a big difference in a company?
I'll give you one, and I can give you a bunch, but I'll give you one from last week. I started with a company uh, about a year ago. They're getting ready to do their first annual planning session, which happens to be 2 days, right? And the visionary calls me, and he's like, it's like almost a year later. And in the beginning, it was bumpy. It was really rough, right? And he calls me and he says, man, you got a minute? I'm like, yeah, I got a minute. And he's like, man, this stuff works. Had my first really awesome conversation with another leader, and it went really well. And that seems small, but it's huge. I mean, you're talking about a $300 million company. And this guy was excited about the conversation that he had, the real raw conversation. And that's the biggest win that you can have, is to actually have a relationship that is meaningful, honest, without a lot of false harmony, where we make a change. And that's when you become even bigger, stronger, and faster.
Yeah.
And I can tell you about the company that went from 800 million to 1.1 billion in a year and a half too. Like now, before I go there, like that's actually a really super outlier company. We do 10 to 250 employees most of the time. I just achieved expert implementer last year. And I tell people, so I have started to get companies that are more complex. And I do two things that I'm pretty known for in our community. It's complex companies and companies that need to have really, really hard conversations, because I tell them, I'm like, hey, there's no rounds coming down range. I'm not really afraid to talk in this room, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's just my personality as an implementer in there. So there's a couple of things right there. I can talk about, the company that last year a success was, with their industry, the economy made them take a bit of a hit. And because of EOS, they were able to really not only keep it together, but keep profit higher, even though revenue dropped. I tell people, this isn't all up and to the right once you have EOS. Like, trouble still comes, but the way you handle that trouble is the way it changes. So if you think you're going to hire me or another implementer like me, and it's just you're stepping over cash on the way to your desk and everything's kumbaya, like that's not the standard. The standard is, yes, most of the time it's going to go up and to the right, but when it doesn't, that's when EOS really works, is when you're tested.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned things being rocky at first.
Yeah.
That company. I know there's growing pains, and with change comes a little bit of pain. Have you experienced that in companies implementing EOS often, where there's, I guess, like employee pushback and it's maybe difficult to adopt the system?
There's always employee pushback. There's always leadership pushback. It's always ownership pushback. Like that's that kind of planet, right? Change is the hardest thing that you ever do. Most people aren't going to do it. Henry Ford said thinking is probably the hardest thing you'll ever do. That's why so few people engage in it, right? Mm-hmm. It's Henry Ford. If you're upset about that, just see him. But yeah, you're always going to get pushback. That's what I am, right? There's an old saying that iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another. Well, I'm certainly that hard edge that you're going to rub up against, and we're going to sharpen. You're going to sharpen me. I'm going to sharpen you. And that's what we do. And, one of our core values is step into the danger, right? It's actually do the right thing, which means step into the danger. I misspoke. Do the right thing is the core value, step into the danger. What if my mother was watching, right? No amount of money is worth betraying trust. And trust is like the air you breathe. When it's present, no one notices. When it's gone, everybody notices. Mm-hmm. Here's what I tell my son. He's 20. I said, if you never tell me something that I don't like to hear, I can't trust you.
Interesting.
Yeah, let that sit. It's true. If you're in a
Mhm.
relationship with somebody, a real relationship, and they never tell you anything that doesn't rub you the wrong way, it's true, that you can't trust that person. So feedback must be specific, it must be respectful, and it must be truthful. It's just that most people see the truth as disrespect, and that's a problem. It's a problem with them, not you. So you were talking about IDS, identifying the root cause. One of the things that I illustrate, and I learned this from a really he's a former Army Ranger and like operator, and so he said, Barry, if I pour rubbing alcohol on your arm and there's no cut, how are you going to feel? And I'm like, yeah, feel cool, you know.
Mhm.
He said, if there's a cut, I was like, yeah, man, it'll sting. He said, so when someone introduces an issue and it stings, there's probably something there. And so we're going to identify the root cause. We're going to clean the wound. We're going to sew it up. And we're going to make sure it heals. And that's how you identify, discuss, and solve. Make it go away forever. And you can't do that with false harmony, right? Somebody's got to tell you that your baby's ugly so you can make it pretty, right?
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. That's hard to do sometimes. To
It's
tell
always
somebody
hard to
that their
do.
baby's ugly,
Yeah.
but it needs to be
It's
done.
always difficult. That's what I tell people. It's always difficult. One of the things that I was training somebody to do the other day is telling someone not to do something that is uniquely human is impossible. So telling someone to tell a leader or their boss and say, don't get nervous, just say it. Don't get scared, just say it. I'm like, that's an impossible task, so they're never going to be able to do it. So what I do is I say, okay, feel the fear, feel the nervousness, and decide you're just going to tell them the truth. Because telling people the truth, my wife said it probably the best one day. She said, it's not the truth that hurts. It's what someone did for you to have to tell the truth that hurts.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell the truth. And once you start telling the truth, like you're free, you're healed from yourself. And
Agreed.
so but you must, to facilitate, right? I facilitate people. I have them enter into an agreement. I say, will you enter into an agreement with all of us together that we can be 100% open and honest with you? And so they have to verbalize that agreement. I'm going to enter into that agreement with you. And that's what makes it simpler. Not easy, but simple.
I think at the beginning of our quarterly planning sessions and our annual planning sessions, we always state just that. We're having an open and honest session to assess where we are.
You mean to give you 2 words to add to it that will help you out?
Absolutely.
It's open, it's honest, it's transparent, and it's vulnerable.
Okay.
And vulnerable is not you telling someone. Vulnerable is like you saying it out loud what you struggle with. Right?
Yeah.
So I like open, honest, transparent, and vulnerable.
If you're struggling to have an honest conversation, say with your manager or a colleague where you're having to call their baby ugly, something that our team practices, and we will say, this is our safe space.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say what I need to say, and it doesn't hurt as much.
Yeah.
I guess.
So there's a good technique. There's a couple of them. I always ask people, hey, are you open to feedback? I'll ask them straight up, hey, you open to feedback? If they say no, sometimes they do. Just move on.
Yeah. We've asked that in the hiring process here at Necking is like, are you open to feedback? How do you handle feedback?
Yeah. Yeah. The positive type or the perceived negative, right? That's the question. It's like, quarterly conversations must be specific, positive and truthful, right? I need to be able to have a positive conversation with you sometimes. Yeah, I love that. And then labeling people as emotion is a good way to do it and go, hey, this is going to seem like that I'm picking on you. Is that okay? And then they'll go, yeah. And then you just tell them, and it's not near as harsh as they thought it was going to be, right? It's good technique. I like yours. Yeah.
Yeah. For business leaders considering EOS, what is the first step they should take?
Yeah. The first step in the process is the 90-minute meeting. And so the 90-minute meeting, what it does is it's not built to close you, right? It's not built to like, all right, here's my pitch and I'm going to close you and try to get you to be a client. What it does, the first step is we come in as implementers and then we take you through a 90-minute presentation that introduces you to the 5 tools that you can start to implement in your business tomorrow, whether you use us or not. And then we give you step-by-step processes to do that. So step number 1 is the 90-minute meeting with an implementer. Step number 2, if you decide to use that implementer, is to have a focus day. And then we take you through our proven process. 30 days later, you'll get a vision day building 1. 30 days after that, you'll get a vision day building 2. And then we meet with each company quarterly, once a year, doing an annual session planning that is 2 days. And then we do about 2 years together. And then after that 2 years, companies have the ability to graduate from the implementer, never graduating from EOS. And it's up to you what you want to do, not me. And what I love about us is we don't do any contracts, no letters of engagement. Like if you want to stop working with us, you just stop working with us. We're good.
How long does the process usually take to like get the whole company running on EOS? Do they section it out in different departments and roll it out that way?
Yeah, the way to roll it out is we decide on Vision Day Building 2 after 60 days of working together what each company is going to roll out. And so every company's different, and we encourage one level down first, get them introduced, and then rolling it out. So it really does depend on the size of your company. If you're a 10-person company, it's pretty simple. We could probably get you completely rolled out as far as everybody being a level 10 meeting, everybody having a number, everybody having a rock, all those things, the basic, I call it the drive to 5, the 5 EOS foundational tools. That's what I'm trying. If I can get people to do that, 80% of the difficulty of running on EOS is mastering the 5 EOS foundational tools. And so that's what I'll just leave it at that. Like if I can get the whole company, 10 people, I can get them there in probably 9 months using the tools at least, right? I've got a company that is 1,100 employees. Like we're on our 4th year and we're still driving. They got 1,100 employees and it's worldwide. It's a big boat and we got to turn it slowly because EOS can as easily disrupt your business if you don't know what you're doing. This is why people will hire someone like me. And I'm like, the bigger your business, the more experience that someone needs to have taking you through it. And so that's the deal. If you've got a smaller business and a pretty straightforward business, like, we had an automotive repair business and plumbing or heating and air, blue collar, and it's pretty small. Like you're going to be fine with a implementer with less experience. Like, and you should, if you have lower revenue, that's why there's different types of implementers, right? There's people with no to low experience. There's people with medium experience and there's people with super high experience. I personally have done almost 600 sessions at this point.
Wow.
I've been it'll be my 6th year in August. And so, last year I did 127 sessions. And so, it's just, it's what I do. I love it.
Do you follow up with these companies? That has to be satisfying for you to know how many companies that you've helped.
Yeah, they become friends of mine. Like people like us do things like this. And so everybody I work with, I just become friends with them because we're just like-minded. And, we have a little bit of, I think it's like, sometimes it's like that, especially boys. And I grew up, in Kentucky down south. And, in 2nd, 3rd grade, you get into a fight with somebody and then they became your best friend. Well, I think it's like that with some of my entrepreneurs, right? Like in the beginning, like I'm going to fight you, and I tell them I'm going to do that. Like I'm going to fight you for the greater good and for what you said you wanted, and because I love you, and then we're going to become friends. And like a great friend, I'm going to tell you the truth, and you're going to tell me the truth, because truth be known, that my clients help me grow. I just got feedback from one of my most respected clients, and he gave me some great feedback. And I was like, man, thank you for that. And it changes the way, you interact with somebody. It changes who you are. And it's good, right? Some of the people that I'm from said, Barry, you've changed. Like it's a bad thing. I said, well, you didn't think I worked this hard to stay the same, do you? I mean, I ain't trying to do that. And so, it goes both ways. You write on each other's wall. It's good stuff.
Yeah. What's one thing that leaders can do today to create better structure in their business?
Oh, this is the number one. So we do structure first, people second. So it's always right to take a big step back, remove all the people from your accountability chart, pretend like you're starting a company that is just like yours and you don't have any people there. You take a big step back, you look at it and you go, okay, without people, what is the best structure to get what I want from this business in 6 to 12 months? And I'm a board of directors. I'm just going to say, okay, what's the structure first? And I'm going to lay it all out, what the structure would be like. My scientific wild guess, right? Swag it with the knowledge that I have. Hokmah means skill with applied knowledge. That's why I think Hokmah's power, not knowledge, right? So you got to have skill and you got to apply that knowledge. Well, you take a big step back, look at the structure, and then put the roles in like we do, you guys do, right? You run on EOS, and then put the people in there that right people, share your core values, right seat. You'll spit out a better company. The problem is you're going to have some people leaving, and some of them, you're going to like them, but you're going to realize that they're not right seat, and you don't have a seat for them. That's why this is not for the weak at heart.
Mm-hmm. I have a question of, to get the right person in the right seat, there's like a weekly metric or number that they're accountable for. How do you set those metrics?
Yeah. So those metrics are set by, they're called leading and lagging indicators, right? So we have a tool called Getting What You Want. And so if someone's struggling with setting measurables for their people, I take them through the process of getting what they want. And then I map out, the easiest way is to map out the process and then start counting the steps in the process. Like what's the most important? How many of these do we need to do how many of these? Right. And then every step in the process can have its own separate measurable. And then once we have all the measurables in that process, what I'm going to do is take out the most important that really drives it. Right. And so it's going to become the 1, 2, or 3 measurables for the individual. That's going to become the 5 to 15 for the department. It's going to become the 5 to 15 for the company.
Is there a certain amount of weeks or a certain time period where if those metrics were off track, it would be the time to have that conversation with your employee of something isn't quite working? Yeah.
So one of the leaders that I worked with in the past, you're from Lexington. You're familiar with White Greer Maggard?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Dr. White, who owns a company that I worked with. And he said that missing measurables without doing something about it is monitoring neglect.
Wow.
So 1 week of that number being off track, we might drop it down. 2 weeks, I'm like, you might want to drop it down. The third week of being offline, all of a sudden, I'm telling you, I think we're monitoring neglect here. We're dropping that down. Because something's wrong.
When you say dropping it down, that means dropping it to an issue that you can then talk about.
Yeah, because it can be confusing. I had one guy get confused, thought we needed to lower the goal. I'm like,
Yeah, no,
no,
that's not what that is.
we're not
Is.
lowering the goal here.
Right.
You're monitoring neglect. We're dropping it down to the issues list so that we can make it 1, 2, 3, so we can go ahead and solve it, make it go away forever. Because one of the things is people don't, one of the things people get confused about is like, well, how do we know what's the top 3 issues? I'm like, if you look at the level 10 meeting in the agenda, the first thing we do is check in with a segue, which is personal best to professional best, because the most important thing in a business is not things, it's people. And so I need to know what's going on in my leaders' lives that is personal and professional that they're winning at. So we start with a positive. Sometimes what happens is somebody checks in and they got some family stuff going on and they're like, hey, I don't have a lot of personal best going on. I got some stuff at home. Now, in that case, I don't drop it down to the issues list. I just, hey, it's supposed to be 5 minutes, as you know. Man, I'll take 20, 25. I'll take the whole meeting trying to love on that person, because that's the right thing to do.
So we do spend a little bit longer than 5 minutes on our professional and personal best in our team meeting, but I think it's a valuable time to get to know, like, if your colleague's not performing super well this week, maybe it's because they didn't have a professional or a personal best from last week.
Yeah, man.
Something might be going on.
We're human becomings, not human beings.
Yeah.
Right?
Love that.
Yeah. And so we love on people. Now, I can't get off track every week because, like, if I got a team full of people who are just like have something crazy going on every week at home, I'm like, hey, man, what's going on? Because, like, it's hard to be one type. You cannot be one type of person at home and one type of person at work. Now, I don't care how many guys say they can separate it and all that. That's bull. But I don't mind going a little longer there. But if you really double down on the next two, scorecard and rocks, if you do it properly, that only takes about 30 seconds. Like, you'll bank some time right there. Because there's no discussing. If it's off track, you drop it down to the issues list and you move on. But everybody wants to explain something there. And all that is insecurity. Like, you're feeling insecure about something, drop it down and let's just talk about it when it's appropriate. I'm not one of these people just remove emotions, but I'm like, control them. You can control them. And so we get so I was into, so you got scorecard and rocks. If you drop those down, then, like, it's hard pressed to tell me that those aren't the top 3 issues on your issues list, because if you're missing numbers and you're not building the most important things to build a better company, that's the most important. And then you go to people headlines with the good and the bad. Well, that's some of the most important, right? If you look at that first 25 minutes, getting to-dos done, promises are, like I said, promises are like crying. I didn't say this one. Promises are like crying babies in the theater. They must be carried out at once. So if you've got to-dos, you got 7 days to do them. So this is the accountability, right? You made a promise. You said you would do it in 7 days, done or not done. This is where people try, well, not done, but. No, not the but. Cut the but. We're going to drop it down again, because obviously something's going on. So 9 out of 10 to-dos should get to done.
Yep. It feels good to check off those to-dos.
Doesn't it?
It does. It feels really good. And it's like, it's for the team. It's for the better of the team, even if it's not something that might directly apply to exactly what I do in my day-to-day, but the to-do was for the team and not just for me.
And we said it was the most important thing to do. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Yeah. It's all our boat, right? Yeah. Extreme ownership.
Yep.
So then so that's how you build that issues list, make sure it's on track. It's accountability, right?
How do you choose the top 3 issues?
I always tell people be selfish. Like, I'm going to get my issue done. So, well, number one, rocks and scorecards. I'm like, hey man, those are top. But if I got an issue on that issue list, I can guarantee we're going to talk about it. I'm selfish. That's how I choose.
If it's important, it's important.
That's right.
Get it done. I'm going to ask you a bonus.
Yep.
What's your go-to productivity tip?
My productivity tip is to delegate and elevate. Like, I don't really do anything that is not my job. I tell people I got one role in my company. I talk to people. And if I'm not talking to people, we're losing money. I delegate everything else. If you're an owner of a business or a leader, do not do $20 an hour work. Delegate and elevate, and then do what you do so well that you're undeniable and people pay you a premium for it, and then you can pay for anything you want to do. I don't mow my own yard. I don't do any of that stuff.
Nice.
Is that good?
Yeah, I love it. Before we wrap up, Barry, this has been an insightful conversation about EOS and how it can help businesses create clarity, accountability, and growth, sustainable growth.
You bet.
So I really appreciate you sharing your expertise and experiences with us today. For those who want to learn more, where can they find you and connect with you?
Yeah, you bet. My microsite, I go to eosworldwide.com /Barry-Barrett, or you can just go to eosworldwide.com, type in Barry Barrett, you'll find me. And then if you want to email me, it's barry.barrett@eosworldwide.com. And then you can find me on any of the social media, I call it, because I don't really get on there much, but and just Google Barry Barrett or go to Instagram. Business with Purpose is our business name. So those are the different places that you can find. It's pretty easy. If you Googled my name, you're going to see me on a lot of podcasts like this. And I have my own podcast called Business on Purpose. So a lot of plugs here if you ever want to listen to it. And then, if anybody wants to reach out, they can, and it's a help first. I'm not going to, with no weird expectations that you hire me or pay me or anything like that. I'm always just going to help you, and every other implementer will too. So yeah, I love it. Thank you for allowing me to be on here, and you have a wonderful podcast.
Thanks so much. I will say when I reached out to Barry, he was very quick to accept the invitation onto the podcast. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Delegate and elevate, right?
Right. And to our listeners, we appreciate you tuning in. If you found today's conversation helpful, be sure to subscribe to Breaching the Boardroom and stay tuned for more discussions with industry leaders and experts like Barry. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover next, feel free to reach out. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Breaching the Boardroom. Join me in my pursuit of growth anywhere you listen to your podcast. For technology tips and tricks and leadership hacks, find me on LinkedIn. And don't forget to send me a DM or leave a comment on a topic you want me to cover next. This podcast is powered by NetGain Technologies, a top 250 internationally ranked managed security services provider headquartered in Lexington, Kentucky, with offices across the Southeast and Midwest.